Now let's work with adjustment layers in Photoshop. And for this, go into Bridge and find number 5, Grand Teton Tiny Todd. So I'm going to double click onto that image to bring it into Photoshop. You see Todd, my husband, in there. He's real tiny in the image, so I called that Grand Teton Tiny Todd. I'm going to Command 0 so it fills my space here, the canvas. Okay, so we've already talked about smart objects and the importance of using smart objects so you're not doing destructive permanent edits directly with your image. The same holds true with adjustment layers. Let me show you what not to do. Okay, let's say you wanted to do an adjustment to this image with the hue saturation, and you went up to the image adjustments menu. Okay, and remember, this is not what you want to do, but let's do it just to get so we can see it. Okay, and we bring this all the way over to the left. Okay, kind of cool looking image there, but I did that directly to the image. If I were to save this, remember, I don't have access to my history states once I re-enter the document, and so it would be a permanent change. Okay, you could play with hue saturation again to try to get back the original look, but ideally you're creating an adjustment layer rather than applying this directly to the image. So let's go back to the original image. So avoid this direct way of doing adjustments. Instead, come down here. Now it's actually going to create a mask, and we remember we've used masks with this, add a mask, but instead we're going to add an adjustment layer. And you can either go there, or you can go to the layer menu, new adjustment layer, and you see all these options here. Okay, all of these are different types of adjustment layers, vibrance, hue, saturation, etc. I'm going to come down here because I want you to get in the habit of using this button, this adjustment layer button, and let's add hue saturation. Okay, so it brings up the properties panel immediately, and you can play with this, and you see it's applying my selection to the whole image. Kind of cool looking. It's really neat what it's doing to that little interpretive sign down there, as well as the sky. Okay, I'm going to bring it all the way over again. By the way, if you end up over here and your properties box looks like this, you just have to click here on this little icon, and that brings you back to the adjustment layer you're currently working with. Okay, so that's the overall layer mask menu or properties box. This is the specific one for hue saturation. There's also an info tab. So don't be afraid to play around in there. You see here that it has created a mask. It's actually put the mask on its own layer, and whatever I'm doing to that mask, it's affecting the whole layer right now. And we're going to change that in a minute, but let me show you some other things. So of course you can move these sliders around to tweak. That's pretty cool. To tweak your options here, that's saturation. You can go to black and white if you put it all the way to the left. Okay, lightness and darkness. And again, that's applying it to the whole image. If you want to see it in the original state, or you want to reset the image, you can go to here. That little undo arrow there. If you want to throw away the adjustment layer, you can click the trash can. And notice that there are presets for most adjustment layer types. There are presets that you can click, and that these will jump to show you where the sliders selectors would be for that preset, and then you can tweak them a little bit if you want. It's just kind of neat. That's cyanotope, sepia, red boost, and then you can even see if does that really make a difference That was the original one there, or you can mute the picture there with that, just like the one here, the visibility eyeball. And then you can tweak those even more, of course, with the slider adjustments. In addition to those, you can come over there. Let me just put this back to that. You can come over here to change the opacity of your adjustment layer. So you don't want the intensity of the 100%. Maybe you just want to bring in, say, 67% to get a little bit of that intensity. You can do that. Okay, so since we're in a mask, what you can do is you can apply the gradient tool. So with your letter G, or you can click on the gradient tool, you can draw that line. Let's say we're in linear, which is kind of interesting. Now just the sky is being affected, or maybe you want mainly to turn this part of the picture into purple. Okay, and you remember all your gradients there you can play with. Okay, so that's kind of a neat way to adjust your image. You could also add additional adjustment layers. So if you wanted to add a photo filter adjustment layer, you could do that. And then intensify your colors or introduce new colors into your image. And they're all going to apply to your image. So you just keep stacking up those adjustment layers on top of your image. And if you didn't like that, you could just click the delete key and it would delete. You can save the image, and if you change your mind later, when you reopen the image into Photoshop, the adjustment layer will be there. So you could later on have access to the adjustment layer, unlike if you had done this up here and you had changed it directly to the image. So just remember that you want to avoid destructive edits and instead add things like layer masks and smart objects in order to be able to save the Photoshop document, re-enter it, and play with it some more later as needed.